Hi, I'm Scientific Illustrator Stephanie Rozzo. Welcome to Nature Sketch Create's Umbrella Mantis step-by-step painting instructional video. In this video, I'll be showing you how to paint the Umbrella Mantis by using Nature Sketch Create's step-by-step painting instructions. Help this tiny business by clicking that like button, subscribe to this YouTube channel, and checking out naturesketchcrete.com for future lesson creates. First, collect the images you need, make sure they're ready to go. Remember, this is just a sketch. Take your time, relax, and don't get too caught up if you think you may have made a mistake. Let's get started. Step 1, transfer the image to the watercolor paper. So first, tape the image down to the back of the watercolor paper. Make sure you don't cover up anything that you plan on transferring. That includes the hole punch lines, the common name and scientific name if you're going to transfer those. And take the graphite transfer paper, dark side down, light side up. Place that on top of your watercolor paper and under your transfer image. And then just gently press it down flat. And then you can start anywhere you like. Just pick a line and trace right over it to transfer it. And you want to use about a medium pressure. And you can check to see if it's transferring dark enough by flipping it up, holding one side of the paper down. And you can see that I've used this transfer paper before. You can use this transfer paper over and over and over. So this looks like it's right about the right pressure right here. And I have the dark side down, so it is transferring. If you had the light side down, it would not transfer. And you'll want to see the lines at the end when you're finished, so you don't want them to be too light. You're going to redraw most of the lines with your micron pens at the end. So go ahead and just trace over those lines to transfer them. If you don't get the lines traced exactly, that's totally fine. This is just a sketch. It's going to be unique to you and perfectly imperfect. And this is meant to be relaxing. So put on a podcast, maybe audiobook, or sit out in nature and just listen to the noises around you. Maybe put on your favorite music. Go ahead and just trace over all of these lines to transfer them. When you have all the lines transferred, go ahead and press down gently on one corner of your image and just kind of flip it up and down to see what you might have missed. I always end up missing quite a few lines, so this helps. So you can move your eye from one side of the image to the other as you flip it up and down to see that. And the flipping is kind of like you would do with a flip book. It can be a little easier to keep track of which lines you're transferring if you use a colored fine tip pencil or a pen. If you miss any lines during this transfer, you can put them in later or leave them out completely. It's really just a sketch, so it's not a big deal. I think I have all the lines transferred, so now I'm going to transfer the common name by tracing the inside of the letters, since my pencil tip is a little bit smaller than the letter text itself. And then I'll also trace right over the scientific name to transfer it. When you're all done, go ahead and remove the transfer paper and save it to the side to use it again. Gently remove the tape from the back of the watercolor paper, and then remove it from your transfer image as well. You can save this tape if it doesn't have too much paper on it and reuse it again. If not, then you can compost it or throw it away. And then use the transfer image while you're creating your painting to protect it from your hand, from any smudges or grease or anything that might be on your hand, or any paint splatters as you mix your paints. I'm going to set that to the side. I'm going to take my kneaded eraser and I'm going to knead it to a light gray spot, and then just use it to erase the graphite that was left behind. And also, I can lighten marks by just kind of smudging right on top of them. As you can see, it just kind of picks up some of that pencil. And now I am ready to move on to step 2. Step 2, paint in Mantis green. Take the 18H Viridian green, shake it up to make sure it's well mixed. Sometimes the paint pigment settles on the side and won't give you quite as a vibrant color. 1, 2, you could use just 1 drop since we're not mixing anything, but 2 drops gives you a little bit more to work with. And we're going to make the whitest lightest, so I'm just going to take a little bit of that, move it to the side, and take a little bit less. So I dabbed it off onto my towel, and I'm adding quite a bit of water. I'm pressing on the barrel of my water brush to release that water, dabbing it off onto my towel and testing it out. And alternatively, if you have a regular paintbrush, you can just move some water from your water vessel into the palette. And I could go a little bit lighter than that, so I'm just going to add some more water. I'm not picking up any more paint. Might need a little bit more pigment. So I picked up a little bit of pigment from that. And maybe just a little bit more. Oh, I like that. So I'm going to use that really wet light because it has a lot of water added to it in my palette. I'm going to dab it off onto my towel. And then I'm going to apply it to the entire mantis, except for the antenna, parts of the wings, and the center of the eye, like you see in step 2's image and your reference image. And you're going to apply this just like you would with a crayon or marker, filling in the space. If you have too much water on there and you can't really control it, just dab your brush off onto your towel and just filling it in. And you start from one side to the other or fill in each area on its own. And pick up more paint whenever you need it if the color is too light. If it's a little too dark, just dab it off onto your towel. And don't worry if the paint gets outside of the lines. If you need a finer tip, just roll your brush on your towel to create that finer tip. It's okay if the paint color is a little different. It doesn't need to be super consistent throughout. I'm dabbing my brush off onto my towel before applying it to my painting, only adding water in the palette itself. And when you have all that paint added, just clean off your brush, let this dry, and move on to step 3. Step 3, paint in Mantis blue and yellow. So first mix the Mantis blue by taking a little bit of the 35H blue aqua, adding it to your palette, 1, 2. We're going to use the wettest, lightest version of this, so I'm going to take a tiny bit, take it to the side like we did with the green, test it out. And I think that that is the right color. So I'm going to dab it off onto my towel. Add just a little bit more water. I don't want it to be too dark. Test it out one more time. See, that looks a little bit better. Picked it up, dab it off onto my towel, and I'm going to add it to the wings in some areas. Ooh, that's still really dark and bright, so I'm going to clean off my brush. I'm just going to take the wet brush over that to pick up a little bit of that pigment. It's not super dark, but it's darker than I wanted. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of this, add some more water to the side, dab it off onto my towel and test it one more time. Might be a little bit better. There we go. So I picked it up again, put it to the side. So it's an imperfectly perfect mistake. It's just going to make it a little bit brighter than I expected. And that's totally fine. It's just a sketch, just a quick representation of this animal. And I'm going to take this color, I'm going to roll it on my towel with just the tip so that I get a little bit of a finer tip. I'm going to add it to this upper part of the abdomen. Pick up a little bit more and roll it a little bit, and then I'm going to add it to these middle upper parts of these rear legs, kind of outlining it a little bit. Just like you see in step 3's image. And then I'm going to clean off my brush, and now I will mix the mantis yellow. I'm going to take 2 drops of the 14H yellow ochre. One, two. I'm going to take just a tiny bit of that, put it to the side because we're going to want a wetter, lighter version. So wetter, lighter being that it has water added to it in our palette and adds less pigment to it, making it appear lighter in our paper. Test that out. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to pick it up. If it's too dark again, that's totally fine. I'm going to add it here to these spots on the wings, and then a little bit in the eye, the hooks on the front legs, mouth parts, and the tips of the feet. And then I'm going to clean off my brush, let this dry, and move on to step 4. Step 4, paint in mantis green. So I'm going to do another layer of paint of the mantis green, but this time we're going to use something that has a little bit more paint pigment to it, so it's a little drier and darker. And go ahead and test this out. And that actually looks like about the right color, so I'll pick up a little bit more. And I'm just going to add it sparingly throughout, and just to add a little bit of an outline to some of these lined areas and on the lower areas as well, so lower lines here, such as here in the abdomen and throughout the legs. So you don't need to make it exact, just the same general areas as your reference image and step 4's image. So go ahead and go throughout and add those lines. Again, if you need a finer tip, just kind of roll your tip of your brush on your towel. When you've added all the green color that you'd like to add, go ahead and clean off your brush. Let this dry and move on to step 5. Step 5, paint in Mantis pink and brown. So first, mix the Mantis pink, taking the 20H alizarin crimson. I want a couple drops of that so you have something to work with. 1, 2. And I'm going to use the wettest, lightest of this, so I'm going to add a lot of water to it in my palette to make it a light pink color. Dabbing it off on my towel and testing it out. A little bit lighter, so I'm going to add some more water, pulling a little bit of that paint pigment to the side into the water. Might be a little darker. Mix a little bit more of that pigment in. I think that a little bit more. That looks good. I'm going to pick that up, dab it off onto my towel, and I'm just going to add it to the wing, just this hind wing area, like you see in step 5's image and your final reference image. And clean off your brush. And mix the Mantis brown. So take 1 drop of the burnt sienna 19H. And 1 drop of the yellow ochre 14H. Mix those together with a little bit of water. Just adding a little bit. And then I'm going to take it to the side because I'm going to have a little bit of a wetter, lighter color. Not too wet, so I'm not going to add a lot of water. Flip this over. And maybe a little bit darker, so I'm going to pick up a little bit of pigment and add it to that. Yeah, I like that a little bit better. I'm going to pick it up, dab it off on my towel, and then I'm going to add it to the parts of the wings, the eyes, mouth parts, tips of the legs, like you see in step 5's image. I'm going to clean off my brush just a little bit to get rid of a little bit of that pigment, and then I'm going to want a wettest, lightest, so I'm going to pick some up, add a little bit more water to it to the side, and test it out. I want a little more color than that, so I'll pick a little bit up, add it in. That looks good. And I'm going to go ahead and add that to this white area, and you can just add it here on the bottom, and then throughout, and then leave that blank, or you can just kind of paint all the way through. Whichever works best for you. And then I'm going to go ahead and clean off my brush, let this dry, and move on to step 6. Step 6, paint in Mantis green and pink. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of the drier, darker Mantis green, so I'll add some more water to it to make it move a little better. It's dried up. And test it out. Mix it a little bit more. Maybe a little bit more water. It doesn't really want to move well on my paper, so I want it to move smoothly, like I feel like your marker might be moving on the paper. And dabbed it off on my towel, and now I'm going to add it like I see in step 6's image. and your final reference image as well. So kind of sparingly throughout and making sure that the color underneath shows through. If you have a little bit too much water in your brush, just dab it off on your towel. And again, don't worry about exact placement, just add it in. It's going to be unique to you and perfectly imperfect. When you have all the mantis green added, go ahead and clean off your brush. And next we're going to add a drier, darker mantis pink. Add a little bit more water to this so that it moves like a marker on our page. So it should feel smooth. I'm going to add it to the wing and this upper abdomen area. So first I'm going to add it in, clean off my brush, so I just have a clean damp brush, and then I'm going to paint right over that, kind of bringing it down into the middle of the abdomen. I'm going to clean my brush off, pick up a little bit more paint, and then I'm going to add it to the hind wing using the same method. So I'll add it in using a really highly concentrated color, kind of lining it, and then cleaning my brush off and then bringing it into different parts to lighten it up. Pick up a little bit more, add it in, clean off my brush. My brush is releasing a lot of water today, so it's getting a slightly different look, which is great. It's making it a little different today and a little imperfectly perfect compared to our final reference image, giving me a little more variation in my art. And here it looks like I may not have let this dry long enough, and so it ended up some of that red mixed with the green a little bit there, or this pink color mixed with the green. To make sure your painting is dry, you can dab it with your finger first, and I should have checked it first before adding that in. But we welcome mistakes, and I like to show my mistakes and keep them in there so you can see what happens when you do different things. So lastly, I think I would like a little bit more of this brown color on the hooks, so I'm going to add a little bit more. I don't think that they're dark enough, and maybe a little more on the feet. And you can add more paint and ink at any time. Just let it dry between the layers and don't get too carried away. And now I'm going to let this dry and move on to step 7. Step 7, add ink lines. Use the 005 black micron, the finest tip micron, the smallest tipped micron, to add ink lines first. Just go ahead and redraw all the lines you transferred in step 1 except for the spots on the wings. Also use it to redraw the common name and scientific name if you added those in. And this should be relaxing, like step 1. So maybe put on a podcast or audiobook or some music, or just listen to nature. So I'm going to use the 01 black micron to write the scientific name and thicken some of the outlines of the wings eyes, the face, parts of the legs, abdomen. Outline the thorax like you see in 7/8 in your final reference. Lastly, I'm going to use the 08 black micron to fill in the common name and fill in these black areas on the hind wing using a left to right motion, up and down, kind of left to right there to fill it in. Do be careful, this pen does tend to smudge, so you don't want to run your hand over it before it dries. And don't worry about exact placement like everything else. This is just a sketch. Just get it in the same approximate area. As you can see, my painting looks a little bit different from my reference. And it's going to probably look a little different every time I paint. And yours should look different too. And now we're done. Great job, and keep practicing. Thank you for joining me. I hope you had fun and had a chance to relax a little. If you have any questions or would like to see a plant or animal featured in a future lesson, please let me know in the comments below. Next, you have a few options of what to do with this painting. You can punch holes in it and add it to your sketchbook. You can frame it, gift it, send it in the mail to brighten someone's day. Also, make sure to share it on our Facebook fan art page and use the hashtag NatureCreateArt to have it featured on our social media. Check out naturesketchcreate.com for future lesson crates and sign up for our newsletter for regular updates.